Hello and welcome to the 61st Radical Poetry Reading. I'm Malvika Jolly, Special Projects Associate here at The Rail, and today I have the pleasure and privilege of welcoming poet Micah Ballard, who has lovingly curated a fantastic lineup of poets and readers for us today, featuring Ari Banias, Maw Shein Win, Shurin, and Guillermo Parra. A few quick notes before we get started. Firstly, we've started all of our events here with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we're on Lenapehoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. Part and parcel of this acknowledgement is the continued recognition that Black lives matter, and that when it comes to our liberations, our histories never unfold in isolation. Secondly, here at the Rail, we're celebrating our 21st anniversary. It's a very big year for us. We're celebrating all year long. By working on our first ever endowment campaign, which will ensure the continuity of the print edition of The Rail alongside our public programming and other experiments in the arts, humanities, and sciences. In that spirit, we encourage you to check out the chat where I'll drop a couple more resources, links, and actions in just a moment. But now it's my honor to welcome our honored curator of this lunchtime. Poet Mika Ballard is the author of 4 full-length collections of poetry. The first is called The Michaux Notebook, Afterlives, Waifs, and Strays, which was nominated for a California Book Award, and Parish, Krewes, as well as over a dozen small books. We came into his orbit through the wonderful Elaine Katzenberger and Garrett Caples at City Light Books in San Francisco, who edited together the 50th anniversary expanded edition of Diane de Primo's Revolutionary Letters. They put us in touch with Mika just barely a few weeks ago, to read a few postcards and poems from Diane to close out our program just last Tuesday. So excited to have you here again. Absolutely an honor, and thank you for joining us. Micah, take it away. And you should be able to turn on your microphone.
Myself. Okay.
Hi.
We are again.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Malvika. Thank you, Fong and Anselm and Nick and everyone at the Brooklyn Rail. Honored to do this quickly and have some friends read. And so what I'll do first is I'll say the order of the readers. It'll be Ari Banias, and then it'll be Guillermo Parra, and then Shurin, and then Maw Shein Win. And beforehand, I'd just like to say a brief couple of things, and then I'll read their bios beforehand. But for starters, I'd like to dedicate this reading to the great artist, printer, poet, spirit, all the above, Atel Adnan, rest in power. And also start off with a statement by my favorite poet, John Wieners: poetry, the most magical of the arts. I know, you kind of have to let that one marinate a little bit. I think all of us poets would agree, but maybe that's because for some of it, it's our primary medium and how we communicate with one another in the world and so forth. But I was thinking about, this is all thoughts this morning, I was thinking about magic in the arts as so many things. And what I've always been thankful for is the community it forms. At least that's, I guess I would say, the magic around me and what I wait for with open arms and an open mouth. All the conjuring, all the banter, all the hangouts and so forth. We all learn from one another. And I think it's been hard for us, especially during COVID and so forth, but to be in person and to do that, or however you can do it, is the best. At any rate, I tend to get long-winded. So in an effort to kind of stop a cartography of non sequiturs, they do connect. I like to just, say thanks, Ari, Aaron, Guillermo, Maw, for reading. And, they're available. They're like company. They're like feelers or thinkers, just like us. And I think that's super important to have, people that you may not have met in person. Like, for instance, Guillermo, I've never met Guillermo, but I've known him since 2006. He's an awesome translator. We correspond a lot, great poet. Great soul. Same with Maw. I've known her for just a little bit, but usually over email or phone conversations. Great conversationalist. I feel like I've known Maw for centuries. Aaron, I've known like for 2 decades, who's a hero that, really lives a life between the lines of what he speaks and reads, and lives in the same neighborhood. and Ari I've known from the Bay Area. And I think Ari, we met in Koreatown in Los Angeles for a group reading. Anyway, Ari also has the finger on the pulse, as they say. So anyway, to get started, let's just, I'll stop talking and let's go with the reading, starting with Ari. So I'll read Ari's bio real quick. Poet Ari Banias is the author of A Symmetry, Norton, 2021, just came out, great book. And Anybody, Norton, 2016, finals for the Kate Duff's Discovery Award and the Penn Center USA Literary Award. His poems appear in American Poetry Review, Georgia Review, Hyperallergic, Kenyon Review, Poetry Magazine, A Public Space, The Nation, The New Republic, Triple Canopy, the Yale Review, and We Want It All, an anthology of radical trans poetics from Nightboat, 2020. His work has been supported by Headlands for the Arts, McDowell, the New York Foundation of the Arts, and the Fine Work Arts Center in Provincetown, the West Institute for Creative Writing, and Stanford Stegner Fellowship Program. Ari lives and teaches in the Bay Area. And I'd like to welcome Ari to read, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey everyone, thank you so much, Micah, for that and for inviting me to read today. I also just want to thank everyone at the Brooklyn Rail for this wonderful series and my co-readers and all of you for being here. So with that, I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna read from the book, and yeah, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Practice. I try to hold in my mind a chemical fire in Texas, a chemical explosion in Yancheng, a passage by rubber boat from Kusadasi to Vathi without even the before or the after, as though discreet, as I can hold the mad king going madder, the spotless meeting room, a team of lawyers, the hemorrhoids of a team of lawyers, the soothing creams, each purchased individually, or the parched fields I have in my view. A pink bucket on its side in the garden all winter, a barely contained moment of ecstasy on a golf course, stomping hard with my boots on spongy, treated earth. Julie fucking Andrews, I shout into the high winds toward a brown scribble of unmanicured woods. Gales from the west-southwest, the thousands of second homes standing empty, swamps from which the spotted salamanders emerge after thaw, after how many gallons of fuel in enormous steel tanks arrive at their destination intact. What can it possibly mean to remain intact, to oppose smug minimalism? What can the 22,000 metric tons of trash entering the ocean today, in the bloodstream, in the paperwork, in the partially masked resentments in any work, forced in the corn, in the soy, in the wheat, I try to hold in my mind, as I hold in my mind a white van and an ATV, yellow as a 90s Sony Walkman, the chocolate milk stain birthmark on your right inner thigh, right next to your pussy, like a witness. Glossy ivy climbing the trees, having snared a single gray shopping bag, tattered spirit. Bird again in the exhaust vent making its nest. My fingers in you and your face while I do that, mythic and ancient, face of centuries, comedy, tragedy, microplastics buried imperceptibly in the face I can't completely hold, the face I love. Meander, meandros. I will say too, just by way of introduction of this poem, it refers to the Greek key pattern that's named after this river, the Menderes River, the Meander River, in what is presently Turkey. And that river does that. Meander, meandros. A law against refugees passed by the children of refugees. Decorative Hellenic borders on Delhi coffee cups, on a silver ring I used to wear. It feels nationalist now. It was always nationalist. Actually, I would say dawn is fruity, not milky, not gold. What to do with the lie of ethnicity? At dinner, T says, Greece is an invention of the 19th century, set on a plinth. Was this green once? Unknown. The cicadas go on. Museum piece. On that part of the island where the ruined tanneries beside the seawall conduct their own inner lives, you tried, like a fetishist of the broken, to photograph the sky through their vacant ceilings. But none of the blue would hold still in its frames, while onto the cellophane snack bags blown into corners and a few resplendent sun-bleached cans, you projected a prefabricated sorrow you know better than to say aloud. The blue's tirelessness is a selling point, so insistent it scalds. And against all proportion, your dollars materialize another carafe of chilled white, full of undisclosed feeling, crushed in the common barrel and so light on the tongue, you think it faded. That's the kind of lie you like, barely effervescent, unattributed. A note of ache in the semen shot into the dirt outside the discotheque, painted tourist pink with a classical name. You gesture again to the filched marble, the headless goddess, dickless youth. They each seem to be you, clinging to absence like some backstage pass to the afterlife, not asking how your nose, how your knowledge got that pitch as you ride it down into the guts of the myth. Immortal pyramid scheme, still coining itself in your lens. A little shroud made only of sunlight and the chewed quarter rind of watermelon balanced on a cement post at a construction project paused for mismanagement of funds. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Ari. That was great. Really appreciate it. I'd like to introduce Guillermo Parra. He's a poet and translator born in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He has published several translations of Venezuelan literature into English, including the poets Juan Sanchez Velez, Black Square Editions, 2016, and Jose Antonio Ramos Sucre, Naomi Press, 2016, as well as the novel The Conspiracy by Israel Centeno, a bilingual collection, that's pretty good. A bilingual collection of selected poems by Vicente Gerbasi is forthcoming from Black Square Editions. His own poetry has recently appeared in the magazines The Canary and Castle Grayskull. He lives in Clearwater, Florida, and is one of my favorite poets and translators. Welcome, Guillermo.
Awesome. Thank you. So thanks, Micah, and thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for this invitation. I'm going to read some of my own poems that from two different magazines that came out recently. The first one is 3 poems that I was really happy Micah asked me to contribute, and it's from this great magazine here, Castle Grayskull. And then I'm going to read a manuscript poem from my notebook, and then 5 poems from another magazine. These are all poems. It turns out it's a manuscript I was writing without even realizing it. And the unifying theme between all of these is music to a degree, music and autobiography. All right, and so all the poems are named after musical groups or musicians. So I'll go. The Beatles. The distance between the notebooks was minimalist, a gesture for the apocalyptic sermons. From television was a baby crawling toward that death chamber. The Beatles' White Album Deluxe has been released, and I've been listening to it all day continuously for the sake of reverberation and the Escher demos. The relatively calm and fractured line of these notebooks that channel December. Dear Prudence, won't you come out to play? Fairport Convention. Fairport Convention's A Sailor's Life breaks into a jam midway through with musical accompaniment to A Sea Journey. The guitar playing by Richard Thompson is a nearly visible feedback. The waves open up after a dissolution, a flicker of whales underneath the surface. This sound requests practice on a daily or semi-daily basis. I appreciate how poetry establishes a mood for an era or an epoch. The warm tones, war tones from when I listened to Only Built for Cuban Links for the first time in North Tampa in 1995. Sid Barrett. I write for under the orange trees along the hem of the downtown river, wearing pentagrams and other emblems of our positions along the shore. We are the way this legend is told. And I want it written down in a novel this Sunday morning with the force of the sun pulling me up to the top branches. This stumble is worth 1,000 rivers and mountains without end, but the last page of the novel is always a disappointment. Too much is left out for the reader to lament or mull over in the rolling credits going by. It's nice jangly. Can you keep it there? So this next one is called Sentimento Muerto, which in Spanish means dead feeling. And Sentimento Muerto was just because maybe most people won't know them here, they're a band from Venezuela from the 1980s. And they were, well, I talk about a little bit here. They were kind of a post-new wave, post-punk band from my generation, a little bit older, from the 1980s. So it says Sentimento Muerto. It was in Caracas during the mid to late 1980s when I wasn't there. I was here in Florida. I left Caracas in December of 1982, days after turning 12. That day of my birthday, we went to Sabana Grande Boulevard, walked from the Centro Comercial Chacaito west to the stores and cafes of my birthday. Those were the waning days of La República del Este, a loose literary grouping of writers, artists, politicians, and associates who would meet in Sabana Grande to eat and drink from the mid-1970s until the mid-1980s. Sentimento Muerto were a post-punk, post-new wave band from Caracas who started playing in 1981 when they were still in high school. Their first album was called El Amor Ya No Existe, Love Doesn't Exist Anymore, 1987. It was produced by the Argentinian Fito Páez, and it merely confirmed what word of mouth and concerts in Caracas told so many people, that this is the band that inaugurates alternative rock in Venezuela. Their guitarist Gallo, 1968 to 1999, later formed 2 other influential bands in Caracas, Dermis Tattoo and Pan. Sentimento Muerto had a practice spot at a home in the neighborhood of Gaudimare, where my cousins and grandparents lived, and my father lived years later in the 2000s, when I was back in Caracas for regular visits. I'd walk by that house on the way down the hill to catch the metro bus at the Centro Comercial Gaudimare during my visits to research Venezuelan literature and visit family. I was rereading Caracas. My father told me about their practices at the house Los Pedernales. The band went through various phases and several albums until dissolving in 1993. I was walking in Bellas Artes in 1993 on my way to the Teatro Teresa Carreño to browse at the Monte Avila Editores bookstore. So this must have been 2001 or 2. And one of the artists selling jewelry on the sidewalk had their song playing on his speakers as I walked by. Atrapado en el fondo de una contradicción, miles de cuadros en mi imaginación. If I'd been in Caracas during the 1980s, I probably would have seen their shows. I only discovered their music in the 2000s during my visits to Caracas, undergoing dramatic changes. All right, I'm just going to read 5 more. They're all relatively short, and these are from that same manuscript, which doesn't have a name actually, but all right, there'll be 1 second here. All right. Alice Coltrane, why would you wash the poem with air when the sea is already broken? Or what I meant was inherently translated into action. On the screen, where the wall vanished into itself, an image with no concrete reference point fails, said Ginsberg at Naropa in 1993. Rimbaud's illuminations and Ezra Pound's cantos he recommended to us for their precise details, a pale flare over marshes. The story itself is the page in this Middle Earth from 1971's Planetary Cosmic Crisis. I was there, it was marvelous. Alice Coltrane and Sachidananda's Page of Air across what has to be summer. What did you say to her when you arrived? The Minutemen. Double Nickels on the Dime came out in July of 1984, their third, a double album, which is important because it's so diverse in its sound, from the expected hardcore political tracks like Vietnam to the classical Spanish guitar of Cohesion and the semi-spoken word on Do You Want New Wave or Do You Want the Truth? Where D. Boone beautifully declares, I stand for language, I speak for truth, I shout for history. I saw them play at the Bayfront Center Theater, opening for REM on the Fables of the Reconstruction tour, here in the memoir of those years when I was a teenage punk, pining for cassettes and concerts. The show in St. Pete was on November 25th, 1985. D. Boone would be dead less than a month later, RIP. Pavement. Pavement's final album and tour found me in Boston, finishing my MA in poetry. Irish folk tales scare the shit out of me. I lived that summer on Bay State Road, went to see them play at the Roxy Theater. Stephen Malkmus was testy and he scolded the band. We've only played this song 1,000 times. But more important for this page are the Velvet Underground I discovered in Massachusetts, summer of 1985 tape player. I'd flip over to side 2 of Another View. I'd first seen Pavement at the Ritz Theater in Ybor City, Tampa, spring of '94. Then 3 years later in Providence at Lupo's. Finally at the Middle East Basement in Cambridge, a semi-secret show for Brighten the Corners. The Sea and Cake. The small venue in Chapel Hill was way too crowded the night we saw them play at Local 506. We waited an hour just to get into the place where I'd also seen Bright Black Morning Light perform for a dozen of us scattered in the same humble rooms 3 years earlier. Their Fender Rhodes organ center stage, burning incense and sage for their trance-like concert. The Sea and Cake performed a sped-up version of a song from the album we'd listened to together in Caracas 3 years ago. Durham and Chapel Hill always had good music. This show was for their Moonlight Butterfly EP tour. They played everything faster, maybe pushed by the crowd. Video footage of the show on YouTube confirms the muddled sound and thrill of the band and its audience. And my last poem is called Vetiver. I liked driving around Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, listening to Vetiver's music in the mid to late 2000s. I saw them play at the Carborough Arts Center with Vashti Bunyan. It was her first tour in decades and she was radiant and she played most of Look After Him. I went to see Vetiver 2 other times in Durham, once at the Pinhook Bar on their tight-knit tour and again at Motorco a couple years later. When I left Boston for good in the summer of 2006, alone in my car, smoking a joint out the window, Before sunrise, drinking from a thermos of coffee, I played their first album along the Mass Turnpike on my way to reach North Carolina that evening. The poem happens at a distance in refractions. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Guillermo. This is just truly amazing that we're all here. I wish every morning or afternoon, if you're on the East Coast, was like this. And it is in our minds, but not always present. But this is really great. And I'm super honored to introduce Aaron Shurin, who's a poet and essayist, an author of 14 books of poetry and prose, most recently The Blue Absolute, Night Boat 2020. Other works include Flowers and Sky, Two Talks, Entre Rios Books 2017, The Skin of Meaning, Collected Literary Essays and Talks, University of Michigan Press 2016, highly recommended, and 2 books from City Lights, Citizen 2012 and King of Shadows 2008. A pioneer in both LGBTQ+ studies and innovative verse, Aaron was a member of the original Good Gay Poets Collective in Boston, which I'm a super fan of, and later the first graduate of the Storied Poetics program at the New College of California. I said the New College, it's New College of California. As a graduate there, how dare I? At any rate, a longtime educator, he's the former director and currently professor emeritus for the MFA in Writing program at the University of San Francisco. Super stoked and happy to introduce Aaron.
Thank you, Micah, and nice to be with all you fellow poets and back at the Brooklyn Rail. I appreciate it. I'm going to read from this book, The Blue Absolute, which was published at the threshold of Corona. And I didn't get to read as much as I wanted to. So I also put a forest of little tags in here, and I think I know how to use them. This is called A Measure of Light. Blazoned with love as a measure of light, at the city beach where the wind blows as if on the tongues of the walking men, while the spangled water, which is my eyes in their glee, refreshes the light and the water and the men who are my glee. And the families are eating where the shade of the high-leafed maple falls, as though sound were muffled of the singing light, or the gulls in their hot shrieks, who are my tongue as it measures my love, and the sun swells in its lowering heat. There is summer in the throng in their party-colored shorts, and the orange umbrella, and the ambling men with their 2 big smiles and 2 tight tees, as they walk in that way with their hips slung low, though as though riding the ground that is almost the slither of their low-seated love. Wild, slow, wide day, and the herons amassing in a blue cloud with their legs flung behind them in glee, which is summer suspended in the long, low day as the blue cloud sails. I decided some time ago that really the perfect way to start a poem was once, as in once upon a time, just once. So here's a couple of once poems. They're threaded throughout a couple of books. This is called Once. Once I was a sailor in a fiction of the sea for a made-up self on a boat of text. I was happy as a comma when the waves broke, lifting me like a magic carpet into the changeable mist, then driving me down through the indigo gulf on a slant of ablutions, erasure. And what of the mist with its long gray hair and crystal kiss, a little template of the fallen sky thickened for disappearing acts? What of its rolling folds, rich as a disc, seething like a surname or a lexicon well? And what of the gulf and its plot-driven plunge, its quicksilver slippages, darting eels, and leading clues of bluey holes descending? Once I was, or could have been, or may yet be, a magnificent sailor, spelled out on a graph of azure rills, with hologram eyes that tell of spillover holes, or vanishing dives, or shedding cells. I bob in the chop, wail in the spray, plunder the swells. And what of the was with its cargo of facts? What of the once with its blown open hatch and flowering mast and panoramic sails? This is called The Rhythm. Once she was a teacher as the wind blows, like a ball gown filling with pink air. She cast a pink dome of shade in which they sat as though it were a room in her mind. They spoke in rounds and measured lines as if her silent glances were an invitation to the dance. So they danced in patterns and scrawls over big hungry silences older than snow. They danced outside themselves and felt the rhythm of her thought as though the mind itself danced. Once we taught together in a city of winds as the trolleys passed with their skidding feet and gleaming windows, pricked by shiny eyes that parsed the city into arcs and bows to form an alphabet of one intent, as if the many minds were one mind, one room in which we sat within the hoop of their and our intention as the breeze blows. Their patience urged us into speech, as though the alphabet had come to life, as though it squirmed and shuddered in our hands as the birds sang in the wind. In our living city, where they sat in rounds in the pink light of their youth, which we bathed in and borrowed from to tease them into speech, as we listened to them listen in the breeze. There's a tiny little poem called Proportion. What about those trees, cedars, so high? I mean, what if I couldn't, or they weren't, in the park where I'm so small to see them streaking up and all their strategies for anchoring and sponging sun, where I can be a watcher so small in the shade, with their green chambered hearts and their high rising sap, and the wind in my ears with my name on its wrists, so wide. What if that? What if those? I slept outside under a canopy of breathing, it seemed, to be small in the fold while the giant old cedar stretched and creaked. I think in a way that's an homage to Bob Vinier's great poem, which goes, "Ah, cormorant, how few of you will exist when." Thanks, Bob. And let's see. It's called On the Steps. How we linger on the steps at sunset. The traffic slows. Red brake lights flare in the dusk. We watch as the people disgorged from the buses walk by, all business from business to home. How we linger who live here and as the walkers walk faster to be where we already are, where we're watching unseen on our stoops, covered already by folds of dusk breathed from our homes as we linger so lucky with brains smooth and muscles unstrung to be already here where we are. How the clouds pink up as the cool air settles and the hot metal dulls on the cars, so many that move slower than the walkers who lengthen their strides and quicken their paces to be where they'll be. It's as if our backs were warmed by the fire as we sit at the mouth of the cave on the stoop with our foyers and lobbies and vestibules open behind us already lit, and we turn to re-enter the arms of our silencing dens like sleepwalkers, hushed and already enveloped in part by the evening descending on the stairs and the steps and the stoop of our home. And one last one called Turning. Or the colors, I tell you, that the leaves pulled from the sky, as they fell, if falling is flying, as we gasped, if gasping is breathing. And that gold, we both thought, or yellow ignited, or sunstrokes fired of leaves bigger than our heads, on the corner where they hung from the tree in drapes as though lit from within, it seemed, or we were, I guess, by the bright drifts we stomped through and sailed on, if sailing is looking and looking. It was 3 days of crimson rebellion and orange confetti on the wing, while the sky beamed to have shot such high glitter from its great wide smile. Or I did, or you did, as we talked as we walked, if talking is drifting and walking is melting into the sky's wide smile. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Aaron. I'll see you on the Visidero later. I'm going to introduce Maw Shein Win right now, and whose poetry chapbooks are Ruins of a Glittering Palace, SPA Commonwealth Projects, and Score and Bone, Nomadic Press. Invisible Gifts, Poems was published by Manic D Press in 2018. Win is the first poet laureate of El Cerrito, California, 2016 to 2018. And her full-length collection, Storage Unit for the Spirit House, Omnidon, such a great title, was longlisted for the Pan American Open Book Award, nominated for a Northern California Book Award for Poetry, and shortlisted for the California Independent Booksellers Alliance Golden Poppy Award for Poetry in 2021. She often collaborates with visual artists, musicians, and other writers, and was a spring 2021 ARC Poetry Fellow at UC Berkeley. Maw, welcome, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Thank you so much to everyone at the Brooklyn Rail. And I'm going to begin with a new poem. Small Finches. In the dream, the body runs from fire, throws on a cape and dashes through the door. The body heads for the hills. This was overheard once at a party. Head for the hills. An ambulance speeds by, blur of rust. The body informs the mind, emergency. The body tries to soothe the mind, breathe. In a dream, the body sees the mother in a glass tank. There is water on the floor, and the feet of the body are cold. Sometimes I forget I have a body. A therapist once said that I did not have holes in my energy field. However, my ex had many. In the dream, I have powerful legs. My eyes are alert. I fly over burning hills and flash floods, leap over hospitals and shuttered stores. My body delivers a message. Drink 3 bottles of ginger water. My mother's body needs a walker, a hospital bed. She reads in her dreams. In the body of the dream, I am swimming. I swim in a deep lake, surrounded by firs and ferns. The water soothes the mind. My mother's body rests on a blanket of warm grass. Books turn pages on their own. Small finches sleep in ferns. And I'm going to read a few poems from Storage Unit for the Spirit House. Storage Unit 202. I crawl into the pod, formerly known as Storage Unit 202. Inside is a quilt made of yesterday's tablecloth, today's plaid coat, and tomorrow's prayer shawls. The storage unit emits a humming sound. Occasionally, a high-pitched note bounces off the metallic walls. I cook peas in the pod. I drink moonshine at dawn. Observations. One might sense a breath over a face. One may envision the tourists trampling the wildflower's superbloom. One can sleep alone with the space heater. Sky Space 2. Found round stone in gutter, felt lighter. School bus arrived. Stone remained in center of palm. Pink sky through window, oval cloud. Felt stone in palm and recalled a father who held a mug made of gold. Wallpaper in dining room, a forest to wonder. Counted people on sidewalk. Girl pulling wagon under freeway overpass. Stone cold in hand. Girl cold in air. Gold forest. And the title of this poem is Which Gives the Outer Pair the Heavy Look of Bronze Clothes on Statues. Mind the maps of nerves. Beware statuesque rabbits who have abandoned their stations. Use heavy cream to cover the eyes of feral children. Oil the statues until they squirm like freshly caught trout. What does it mean to blow smoke through thick walls? Use twine to bind two hands reaching through prison bars. Read a couple more poems. Cinema. The auteur pops pain pills. Hybrid, saga, biopic. Adrift in the headroom. Gnat escape. Sirens. Deep background. Close-up of beehive in a cemetery. Fugue state. Reverse shot. Tomb fur. Montage of lace handcuffs and cardboard boots. Choking ocean. Diorama. Where will the deer sleep? I thought about this last night, as I always do. Why do we hope? Hope and beauty are obsolete constructs, they concurred. How does a painting speak? Language is a difference among three things. Who enters the spectacle? The brave ones with their silk skirts. The dining room table was set for 6, one missing spoon. My neighbor captures escaped bees with a butterfly net. Forest burns a violent red. Deer leap from flames singed flanks. Hold on now to what's left. And I would like to end with a new poem from a series called Thought Logs. And this is Thought Log 18. Live in a snow globe. I communicate via semaphore. Gutter barn, iron lace, snake milk. Short-circuited tank time. I am made of soft bones. This is a testing situation. Life can't kill my rainbow. Chain dimples, owl kitsch, cheese dust. Places with the highest daily reported cases per capita. Cinematic salmon tones, transported embrace. Hot foam, pink snaps, mace stash. I sense a donkey theme in the narrative. Delectable signals, raven bed, robe sizzle, bee wrangler. We're having chocolate for dinner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maw. Those were so truly beautiful. Everyone run to her books. And finally, to close us out in style, it's my honor now to pass the mic back to our very own curator, Mika Ballard. Mika, take it away.
Thank you, everyone. This is amazing. I don't even want to read. I just want to like lay on the sofa and think. But at any rate, I'll read a handful of poems. This Gumbo Yaya. To the vicious flowers of ultimate grade and paranoia from inhaling them, to the decadent and cheap, too anxiously beautiful to be invisible, to knowing so many people you can't even hide in your own city, to the real hoods who introduce novices like us to ignore instinct, to all the youth ministers and their convictions speaking in tongues, to all the dead I know who are alive now more than ever, to waking up feeling effervescent and obnoxiously young, to compromises and the resulting frequenters forever out to get you, to leftover jambalaya and crawfish etouffee that makes everything all right, to all the impossible friends having achieved the security of where they are now and lovers of the same sort who I'd do anything for if only they'd pay, to Cat Power and Wu-Tang Clan finally collaborating, to the future goodwill of those in the know and their long Lincoln Continental maroon polished fingernails, to caked black lashes that make it hard to blink, and to those who smudge and blend, able to trick off and play off any atmosphere. This is for Rene Ricard. Out of contrariness, I Southern bailed it out. They're all adjectives anyway, and are supposed to make you feel modified, not half decided or too conceited to slum around. You know, coincidence bumps. So some new nouveau can think you're attainable, then you pay them back, good and hard. Almost bloodthirsty, veiled and transparent with a thick smile. Not like Cobra Commander, but definitely a snakeskin leash in our Lawrence of Arabia friend exchange. Sounds like an old heaven stuck in the rafters. Why don't you try these bruised amateur capsules, and we can go for soporifics. I'm only allergic to Christmas trees and lions. Skullcaps, nightshade, and mandrake get a pass. There's too many dispensaries popping up anyway, most teeming with undesirables, swelt as hell, and blacklisted by the cloudful. They keep saying for a mayor of cross streets, I have a weak whistle. If you hear something in the background, that's roofers sawing things on the roof right now. It's perfect timing as per usual. At any rate, interlocutory. Arrested for telling fortunes without a license. I orient my services using stunt dummies around actual crypts. The bulbs are infrared and lead to a sunken garden disguised as a tent in the sky. So the benevolent thespians can speak again. I am nominated to be one of the levitators, a noble beast snipping generously from the land of limbo. Turns out toasting the galaxies gets draining. Who brought the Wanda tipping table anyway, and why are the gallons 100 bones per fitting? I am not trained, but can connect you. Among the gullible, I'm on a word fast. They say I have the psychic faculty of a dog. Let's do a few more, if that's okay with everyone. Tendrils. I awake a rotting mansion, another shadow in the chiaroscuro, missing the points of my greatest peaks. The words fill up all the dead spaces by sparking conversation. No less ridiculous pretending the camaraderie is finally alive again. Kick out of my own band for holding hands with the psychic janitor. Physical form, it never mattered anyway, knowing all the snakes through their lineage of venom. I have the fortune of directing their cumulative gloom and specialized dread. When I come down, their cologne hurts my stomach, but the serum extrum from the new reptiles sustains the air and thus makes me blissfully unaware. Here we go, last poem. At the Museum of Death. This is a real place in the French Quarter in New Orleans. And a real siren outside.
The authenticity.
Okay. At the Museum of Death. Alligator grave marker, deer hoof thermometer, embalming kit, antique eye caps, Victorian mourning ring, original Thanatron, aka the suicide machine, blood sacrifice vessel, poison blowpipe darts, confiscated shanks, funeral home fly swatter, Egyptian priest mummy linen, serial killer greeting cards signed, bed springs from Spawn Ranch, Poem by Toolbox Killer. Autopsy Headrest. Flyer from Death Row Art Show. Collector's Guide to Criminal Autographs. David Koresh God Rocks t-shirt. Electric shock autopsy photos. Original cooling board. Cannibalism spoon and fork. All right, here's the last one. Name value. Somehow made up, I diverted from the catalog by deficiency of imagination. Now it rules over everything, befriending the belligerent, toasting them, roasting them. We like to trade helmets and swing the hijinks back to the visitors. Who doesn't like to jump on cop cars? In the furlough morgue, I polish their trophies and try to stay in my own lane. Everything I used to rely on feels totally forced, and heavy humor makes me feel like a fucking jock. I've always been on academic probation. All the aging aristocrats thought I was too enthusiastic and said I didn't know how to read poetry. So I started writing it, you know, a lick for a lick, stranded on my own gambling ship. When I put on a mask, the plumes still undulate. When I take it off, I can't recognize myself. Sometimes I think I do, but all the work takes so long to pay off. Grazie. Thank you, everyone.
Micah, you said you always underread, but this time I think you read perfect.
Thanks. I added a couple. Oh gosh, the computer's falling. On top of a stack of skateboard magazines. Amazing.
Is it really?
Yes, Thrashers.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much for reading, for coming in, for curating, for being such a comrade. And thank you so much as well to Ari, Maw, especially to Aaron and to Guillermo. And of course, thank you so much to all of those in the audience and in the chat. It's been a really beautiful audience today. This has been really a celebration of, like you said, being in like company, being among comrades, being in fellowship with the poetry community. It's been really beautiful and a wonderful way to send us off before the holiday. As always, we'll share the recording of today's reading on our event archives. It'll be available in a day or two if ever you wish to revisit this magical space. And we typically do this every day at the Rail, but today, in the next couple of days, we're taking a little break to celebrate the holiday. But if you miss us, never fear, join us for a holiday screening of 3 art films by Ami Wallach. We'll be screening Louise Bourgeois, The Spider, The Mistress, and The Tangerine, a cinematic journey inside the life and imagination of Louise Bourgeois. We'll also be screening Ilya and Amelia Tabakov, Enter Here. It's a film about 2 of Russia's most celebrated international artists coming to terms with post-Soviet Russia. And our final film is Taking Venice, The Rauschenberg Factor, which is on Robert Rauschenberg at the 1964 Venice Biennale. Those will be virtual screenings available throughout the day, tomorrow and Friday. You can find more details to register and access the films at the link below. But just a little treat to get you through the holiday. And other than that, thank you all so much. I'll invite you all to turn on your microphones now if you would like to say hello to one another, goodbye on your way out, or anything else that really compels you. But thank you so much. This has been truly beautiful. And one moment.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Micah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
So much, Micah.
Guillermo.
Thank you, Micah.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Maw, especially.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been really
Amazing.
beautiful.
Beautiful reading. Thank you, Ari. Thank you, Guillermo. Beautiful curation.
Thanks, Ari. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
you.
Maw.
Bye bye.
So much.
Thank you so
Happy
much.
holidays.
Enjoy
Hi,
the holiday.
Take
Have
care.
a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Okay.
you guys.
Bye.
Be safe. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Thanks.